guys, welcome back. We're so happy you could join us today. Today we're in for a special treat as we get to have a conversation with Kate and Jake Dietz. I had the opportunity to meet these guys. I was so impressed with them. Also, I want to add, they have the coolest movie theater room I've ever seen. So we get to have a great conversation with them today, guys. Thanks for doing this.
Yeah, of course.
We're very excited. And as you know, if you've ever seen the podcast, we like to start with like the hardest question. Just jump right out, right into it. Are you ready?
Yep, we got it.
What is your favorite Star Wars movie?
That's tricky.
That's going to be harder for you, I think,
Yeah.
than me.
So go ahead and rattle yours off.
I like The Last Jedi,
Okay.
which is,
I'm
I
with
know.
you.
Interesting
It's the only
choice.
one
Yeah.
I know. So.
Right?
Okay.
I know that's...
It is. It's like a,
Yeah. That's a, yeah. It's well, no, it's a
It's
movie.
a Kylo and Rey thing.
It is,
It's
yeah.
so cool. I
Yeah.
don't know. I know that's an unpopular answer, but I'm
Well, I
sticking
don't know if
to
it's
it.
unpopular. It's just wrong.
and I'm into the cartoons and the movies.
Yeah,
And,
yeah.
But I think the original Return of the Jedi would probably be my
Really,
favorite.
Return of the Jedi.
You're close. Return
I
of
know,
the Jedi.
right?
I know, right?
Well,
So it's...
that's a great one. Return of the Jedi is a really
It's
good
my
one.
favorite. I loved the scenery. Tatooine is favorite
Yeah, it's awesome.
location and all
So
that.
it is a
so,
good one. Yeah. I think. Yeah, it's a good one.
Yeah.
I think the first Star Wars for me is just because I loved it, but the
iconic.
first movie I remember my dad taking me to
Oh, that's awesome.
was the second one. So he took me to see that in the theaters. I was like 3 or 4 years old, but I still remember it.
That's awesome.
So I remember I fell asleep as the ship sank in the swamp, just so you know. That's where, but I remember going. No, it's great. That's awesome. Well, thanks, guys, for answering that very difficult question. It's not that we're going to grade you or judge you on that question, but we may. But we really wanted to ask you, because when I came to your house, I was actually buying your couch.
Yeah.
It fits great in our home. Thank you
thank
for
you.
selling us your couch. And I was so taken back. I mean, as soon as I walked in, you were so welcoming, so kind. But you came out to help us measure just by overhearing the conversation. I was just really taken by your hospitality and kindness while I was there.
Thank you.
You took the time to show us your basement. I got to tell you, me and my buddy have talked about that basement every day since.
awesome.
Just wonder why we're failing in life.
Oh, I love that people love that.
Yeah, it was
He's
great.
so talented.
But and we got an opportunity to pray with you guys, and I really wanted just people to be able to hear you, just your testimony about Jesus Christ in your life, and give you guys just an opportunity to just talk and share with just really whatever you felt in your heart. But I really wanted to say thanks for doing this.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, of course.
yeah, it's awesome. But yeah, if you wanted to start, just tell us a little bit about you, your journey, and like how you met Jesus and what that's been like.
Well, my life was pretty rough growing up.
Sure.
My parents were actually both addicted to methadone.
Sure.
So they were drug addicts. And my dad was an alcoholic on top of that.
Yeah.
And we moved a lot.
Yeah.
They got a divorce when I was 5.
Sure.
And very quickly my mom met somebody new. So, but she would go back with my dad, and so we would be flip-flopping cities,
Sure.
schools. So there was a lot of that growing up.
Yeah.
And
Get that.
finally, my mom was going to go through a divorce with her new husband, and so my brother and I got put with my grandma and my aunt.
Sure.
So to kind of, things were pretty crazy in our lives and with our parents. So that was like the safest place for us.
Sure,
Yeah.
totally.
So
How old were you at that time?
I was 11,
Okay.
and my brother was, he was 13.
Sure.
So he lived with my grandma, and I lived with my aunt. And it was kind of like going from no rules at all to like a drill sergeant
Yeah,
almost.
yeah.
It was shocking.
I bet it was.
It was shocking.
Yeah, I get that.
To have my whole life just feel like I was in and out of the house whenever I wanted.
Sure.
So I didn't do well with
Especially
that.
in those you're preteen right
Yeah,
there,
with that-
right?
yeah, that I
Yes.
got that going on.
Yeah.
You're
And
just about to start knowing everything. You're right at that. You're right at that cliff.
Exactly.
You know?
So when I was 14, I ended up actually running away from home.
Sure.
And I lived on the streets for a little bit in the middle of winter. Great idea. 14, thinking,
Yeah.
it's better than this place.
You'll show them.
Right, right.
Yeah. I ended up getting picked up and put in the youth home.
Sure.
And that was a good thing.
Yeah,
you know.
yeah.
Right.
But while I was in there, I actually met my future husband. Great place to meet. I know. Yeah.
It wasn't me.
No, I did
first
put that
husband.
together.
Right,
I was like,
right.
well, that's not him.
Yeah. So we ended up after we got out, we ended up going to the same high school and stuff.
Sure.
So we actually started dating and stuff after. And then my mom actually passed away.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah. And so that it was rough. It was on Easter.
wow.
Yeah. And at that time I was living with her just a short stint.
Yeah.
And then that happened, and so then they let me live with my dad. And he ended up passing away the same year, at
Oh,
the
my
end of the
goodness.
same year.
Wow.
Yeah. And
How old
so
were you?
I was 14.
Oh,
Yeah.
man.
Yeah.
That's tough.
It was, yeah, it was really
That's
tough.
really tough, yeah.
And I had met my boyfriend, and
Yeah.
him and I think that kind of solidified our relationship because we had been through, he didn't know my mom, but we started dating between,
Sure.
me losing her and
Yeah.
my dad passing. So he did meet my dad, and then it was like, well, where do I go now? And so
Yeah.
his mom lovingly let me move in with them,
Yeah.
and so we were able to continue going to high school, and so kind of had like try to be normal
Sure.
for a while.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so and then we had our son, and we got married, and we had him pretty young.
Sure, yeah.
17.
Well, you were
I was 19.
19,
Yeah.
so
I
yeah,
had my
yeah.
first.
So you get it.
Yep, yep. And now
Or
this whole
20. I was 20. I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
you
I
were
was
20,
Yeah.
19 when you
Yeah,
yeah.
19.
Still young.
Yeah.
Still young.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And so this whole time you're going through all this, you don't know Christ.
So my aunt would take us to a Lutheran church.
Sure.
And I remember having a lot of questions, and
Yeah.
I didn't really feel like I got answers, and
Totally,
I was
yeah.
confused, and I think I understood like what everybody was teaching about, but I had the questions were like taking over the
Yeah,
things that
I
I
get it.
could see as truth, you
Yeah,
know.
absolutely.
So and my boyfriend, my eventual husband, he did not believe in God, so he kind of convinced me, which I was already like on my way out.
Sure.
Right.
And it was kind of easy to say, well, why would God let
Yeah,
both your
absolutely.
parents die? I know a lot of people have a
Absolutely.
hard time with that kind
Yeah,
of
of
a thing.
course. Yeah.
So yeah, it didn't take me long to be like, that makes sense.
Yeah.
And so we moved out on our own. We had our child, got married, and things were pretty good. We actually had another child, our daughter, when I was 19, so it's still really young.
Yeah, still very young. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we just had our little apartment, and we lived there, and
Sure.
we're good. And
Yeah.
then my husband actually took his own life in 2007, and the kids were young. They were
Yeah.
5 and 7, and that was kind of, since I feel like I didn't have God, I put everything into him,
Yeah, of course.
a
yeah.
person,
Yeah.
and it was devastating.
How old are you at this point?
I was 24, and he was 25.
So by 24, you lost both your parents, and now your husband.
Yes.
That's tough.
And I didn't do well.
No.
I did
Yeah.
not handle it well. I actually attempted suicide myself.
Sure.
And the kids had to be taken from my custody
Sure.
for a while. And during that time, not having anybody around, I really like dove deep into drinking.
Yeah.
I didn't know how to cope, and it was readily available, and so that's what I did and I ended up meeting somebody new right away because
Sure.
I was hanging out with people who were drinking, and
Yeah.
and immediately I was like, okay, this is great. Like I can be with somebody again and kind of like get normal life back,
Yeah.
so to speak. So we did end up getting married really quickly.
Sure.
It wasn't the best decision. We
Right,
didn't know
yeah.
each other
Yeah.
well. So it was a rough 3 years of marriage.
Wow.
Like just basically we were drinking friends.
Yeah.
And it should have never gone to, marriage.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
So, but I did have that like moral, I really don't want to get divorced. I really want to try and make this work. And we tried, and it eventually wasn't going to work anymore. So we
Sure.
did have to get a divorce.
Yeah.
And right after that, I actually went online on an online dating site, and I met Jake.
Awesome.
And he was a believer.
Yeah.
And honestly, that almost made me not reach out to him.
Sure.
I was so against, don't tell me about it. I don't want to hear about it. I was still very much really resistant.
Yeah. And you're like 27 at this point, I'm
Yes.
guessing.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's
Okay.
exactly how old I was when I met him. And so, but he was actually struggling, like your own
Yeah,
self
my own
with.
walk wasn't great. I believed in God, but didn't.
Yeah.
I was angry with him, so I kind
Yeah.
of didn't want to have anything to do with him at that point in my life.
Absolutely, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And so he wasn't pushy, which I was good. Because if he had been pushy, I probably wouldn't have kept dating you, honestly. Which is like surprising, right?
That's still alive. If your personality had been any different, I'd have been out. Oh, that's awesome.
But yeah, I mean, he never tried to convince me that
Sure.
God was real,
Sure.
and I was thankful for that.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you were struggling with your faith, but you were like still had your faith.
Yeah.
You never fully walked away.
No, I just was very angry.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it was more just.
and I understood that. I definitely understood being angry.
Yeah.
Well, disappointment's a rough thing, right?
Yeah.
You get disappointed, and
Yeah.
and I got to be honest, like listening to this part, I think, man, without knowing God, how you got through this is it's unbelievable.
Absolutely.
And I know lots of Christians go through disappointments with God, and especially if you feel like this is all I ever wanted, it doesn't work out, and now like what does this look like for my future? So I totally get it, and I also that's how me and Mandy met. I wasn't a believer, and she was disappointed with Jesus. She was mad at God. She was mad at the church.
Yeah.
And I was the kind of guy you hung out with if you were mad at the church.
Sure.
It's that guy. And I think it's one that the Bible actually tells us God works all things to good.
Yes.
And I thank God that He gave me Mandy, because she's the only girl on the planet that would have loved me non-saved and saved.
Yes.
Like I was incredibly blessed, and but it is proof that God loved me more than her, though. Just so, He gave me her, and she got me. So you meet him. You're struggling with your walk, but you're struggling with your relationship with God. But you believe in God. You love God. You're just struggling with this.
It was almost to a point where I had no doubt about God. I wanted nothing to do with him.
Yeah.
Like, I know you're there, but stay away from me.
Yeah,
That's how
I
felt.
get it.
felt.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so, and he has an ex, and so, and she was still in the picture, and obviously my first husband wasn't, which is the father of my kids, and my second husband, after we got a divorce, it was like cut dry, like don't have to come, don't have to visit this ever again.
Yeah.
And so we were struggling a lot with just issues with,
Of course.
I mean,
Blended
when you
family
get
and-
divorced, it's just messy. And
Yeah.
we were, and we had a blended family. He has 2 kids. I have 2 kids.
Yeah.
And I just remember one day, like, it was a particularly hard day with his ex, and the 3 of us, I think, got into a pretty big fight, me, you, and her. And I just came down to the bedroom, and he was down there with me, and I just said, I can't do this anymore.
Yeah.
I can't go through this anymore. And I looked at you and I said, will you pray for me? And I think you were probably like totally shocked.
What did you think in that moment?
Well, so I didn't want to, because I'd heard Kate's story. And because of me struggling like I was struggling, I really didn't want to force and say, okay, here's my belief, here's my, that was part of my struggle. It was never mine.
Right.
It was, my family's, my parents. So I was working through my own stuff, and at a point where God was speaking to me and basically like, I'm here and I'm not going anywhere.
So good.
And so in my own heart and in my own head, I'm like, all right, what does this look like, God? As she comes to me and says, will you pray with me? You know, in that same time frame.
Wow.
It was wild.
Yeah.
I was shocked. It was,
I
yeah.
bet.
Yeah.
I bet.
And he prayed for me, and I remember feeling like he prayed and then I prayed, and
Yeah.
I was just like, I felt this weight
Oh, yeah.
lift
You could see
off
it in her
me.
face. It was wild.
It was unbelievable.
Yeah.
It was, you call it my white light moment.
Yeah, she started just smiling and laughing.
Literally
Wow.
laughing and crying. Like
So
the
good.
amount of just pressure I
Yeah.
felt lifted off, and it was like, wow, this is real. Like,
Yeah.
this is nobody's here. It's you and I. I mean, and at that moment, I was like, this is real. And I from that moment on, it was like, I was still a little hesitant. I didn't want everybody to know, because I was like, so just
Well, just wanting to make sure, you know,
was
because
real?
sometimes we have those experiences,
Yeah,
and
right?
is it real, or is it like an emotional high? Or,
Right.
And it was a very, like, we both just kind of wanted to let God speak with us and not let outside influences be like, oh, that's so great, you did great, oh, that's what you need
and
to do.
you know,
And-
whip us up into whatever,
Right.
you
Sure.
know.
Yeah.
So, and he had been going to Crossroads Bible
Yeah.
Church, and he had previously before.
Yeah.
And so we were kind of talking about maybe going back, but it took us a while
Yeah.
to get in there.
Sure.
Yeah. And once we did, it was great. I mean, we felt convicted about a lot of stuff.
Sure.
We lived together before we were married, and
Yeah.
with all of our kids, and it was just we grew a lot
Yeah.
when we
Yeah.
finally started going back to church, and that
So
was
good.
really and our kids win, and it was life
that
seemed
led to our
pretty good.
the conviction led to our, we call it the like the Harry Potter has the room of requirement.
Yeah.
So we got married and we called it our date of requirement. We got
Yeah.
married on leap year. Just
Yeah.
So
it was
cool.
when we started
Yeah.
feeling
We knew
conviction.
we
were
wanted
like,
to get
we need to
married.
get married now.
Yeah.
Like
We
we
knew
went to
we
the justice of
wanted
peace
to.
and we're like, let's do this to make
Yeah.
it legal.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And
We'd
we'll
both
deal
been
with the ceremony down the road.
previously- Yeah.
That's so cool.
Both
We got
being
married at
previously-
the Justice of
Yeah.
Peace.
You know?
Yeah.
It's a story. It was
I
great.
know.
We
Yeah.
had 2 officers be our witnesses. It was just 2
It
of us
was a
there.
total secret. We didn't.
It was,
We
yeah.
we didn't really.
No, we told nobody.
Yeah. So we brought a cake home that day.
Yeah,
and
that's
Did
right.
you, did you say you get married on leap year?
Yes.
Yeah.
So can I
the
ask, I've
29th.
always wanted to know about this. Do you celebrate every year, or is it just once every 4
we
years?
we actually have 2 weddings.
Oh, okay.
We did
Yeah.
another wedding.
Sure.
The same year.
Got you,
On the
okay.
day we met. And
Very
so,
cool.
Okay.
Yeah.
We
so
like to
on
do-
the off years.
On leap year, we like to do something big.
Yeah.
But then every other one is just like, you know, you want to go out to eat or.
Yeah.
So you have 2 dates to remember instead
Yeah.
of just one.
I do.
But
That's
at
put
least
yourself in a
one's
lot of
leap
pressure.
year, so that one's
Right.
leap year
I
one.
mean,
Yeah.
I'm horrendous with dates. So, yeah, that's bad. Yeah.
And then the one was, we kept it. It's actually his dad's birthday when we got it.
That's
Yeah.
the first day we
Same
met in
date.
person. Yeah.
Yes, and that was
That's
the first day
awesome.
we met.
Okay.
Just a year later.
Yeah.
So yeah, and we all 6 of us lived in the same house for years, and it's rough having a blended family.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
We thought we were gonna nail it. It was gonna be great. Like we don't even read any of these
we were reading books, and the statistics were scaring us. But then we were like, "Psh, that's other people.
not
That's not us. We're not that statistic."
Yeah,
Oh my
it's
goodness.
never gonna be us.
We were so wrong.
And it was difficult.
what is the age difference between?
They're all really close.
Are
Very
they?
close.
They are. Yeah.
Because I
Yeah.
have 2 stepsisters, and I think for me, like I was close to age with one of my older
Yeah.
stepsisters, so that was easier.
Sure.
Sure.
But my younger one, it was hard for us to connect
Yeah.
on
Yeah.
that.
We
So
were
Yeah.
blessed with that. The boys instantly
Yes.
connected, and
So
the
good.
girls instantly connected.
And the boys are the oldest.
Okay.
They're both of ours, and then
The
the
girls
girls
were 2
the
years apart.
youngest. Yep. And so
Gotcha.
they're 3 years apart, and then
Yeah.
so all of the older ones were only 1 year apart. So
Oh,
it
wow,
was like
okay.
my son, then his son, then my daughter,
cool.
and then 3 years later is his daughter. So
Okay.
yeah.
And then which was the son that I met?
Our oldest.
That's
I
Sean.
gotta be honest. What a sweet kid.
Aw,
he's a
thank
great
you.
kid.
I gotta be honed. It was interesting because we were loading the stuff and he came out to help. You know, I'm old and
Yeah.
fat, you know, and the joints don't work like they used to, so he's
Wait, you
helping me.
didn't tell me some kid helped. Bring
Well, listen, it wasn't vital to the story.
you were like, I did it. Me and Kean did it.
But he came out and he was, and I'm sure he was just being nice. He was like, "Man, I really hope we see you again." I was like, "What a nice thing to say." He probably didn't mean it, but I think
No, he
that's
did.
so
That's
nice.
the kind of kid he is.
Such
Yeah.
a good, kind kid. He hung
He
out.
is.
He even let us, you know. I'm sure I was nerding out in your basement because I was very excited. But I'm. Can I talk about that for just a second? Like
Yeah.
I looked at him, like hearing your story, and having been in your home,
Yeah.
which I would absolutely call a home of peace and a home of comfort. Like it just is, and seeing how he is, like obviously God's hand was in your life this whole time.
Yeah.
And so when you look back at all of the, I mean, really traumatic things you went through, like when you think about that and you think of that in correlation to who God is in your life, how was he walking? How do you think God was showing up in your life even back then?
I know for a fact that he saved my life when I tried to attempt
Sure.
suicide.
Yeah.
I was minutes from dying, and I was found. So in that moment, like I was mad, I was
Yeah.
upset,
Yeah.
but looking back, it was like, wow, God, like my time was not up, and you were there. And there was many people along the way that would try to
Yeah, of course.
talk to me about, and I do feel like those were little moments where
They
he was
were,
just
yeah.
planting seeds.
Absolutely.
And so, yeah, I can see looking back, he really was with me the whole time.
That's so great.
You know, hoping that I would come back.
Yeah, yeah. I love that. I love. It's probably one of my favorite parts about being a Christian is being able to have. I like to call. You know, I didn't grow up Christian, so I meet a lot of people that do, and I love that. You know, they knew this Heavenly Father their whole life, and they were always aware of when He was in their sphere of influence. You know, they were aware.
Yeah.
But me getting saved later in life and looking back at all the things I went through, I remember when I got saved, like just these flashpoints that popped in my head of all these moments that, oh, that was God, and that was God, and that was God, and like, or all the people that planted seeds, you know, and you know, I remember the first time I read that scripture that some plant the seed, some water, some water, you know, that
Yes.
I remember reading that first time, and it was like God showed me all the times that people planted seeds in my life and loved me enough to share the gospel, you know, and share hope, you know, and it's a beautiful part of, I think, you know, what I would say is our testimony of Jesus in our life, because we did come to know Him later, and so you guys are married, and you have this moment, you pray, and now God's part of your life, and now you got to figure out how to walk out Christianity.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
And
Yeah.
present it to our kids was really important to us too.
Yeah.
That they see the mistakes we made, and you know, and I mean, I remember that was one of the first things we did was we told them, there's some things here that we haven't done right, and we want to pray as a family and ask God for forgiveness for this.
And we
and
did
just
in
trying to-
front of them, and
Right.
it was the right thing to do. Because it's one thing to tell your kids, like, yeah, we moved in together before we were married, but don't you do it.
Right.
Yeah.
And there was a sermon, and we both walked away, and we're like, I was convicted of that, were you? And he
Absolutely,
said yes. And so we decided to make them a part of that. Like, this is what you do, you know?
Yeah.
And I mean, and all of the kids still, they would go to church with us, and your kids grew up Christian.
Yeah, in the church.
Mine did not, obviously. I wasn't. But they all were saved, and that, I mean, they all chose.
So cool.
Yeah, and it was hard with. It's been hard with a blended family.
Yeah, of
and as they got older, my daughter especially really, really struggled with the passing of her dad.
Sure.
And she also had mental health. She had borderline personality disorder.
Yeah.
And so we had probably the roughest time with her. So she's the third, she's a middle child now.
Yeah,
But she was the baby.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so she actually graduated early. Like, she wanted out of the house that bad. Our house is, too many rules. Yeah. She graduated early. She moved out, but she struggled a lot with her mental health, and she did attempt suicide 3 times. And then in March of 2020, she was successful. Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
That's tough.
But to have God this time, a world of difference.
It is.
World of difference.
Yeah. How old was she?
17. Yeah.
Oh, I'm so sorry. We're gonna need some tissue, guys.
Yeah.
That's tough. That's tough. And how long had you guys been married at that point?
Well, we'll be together this year for 10, so the kids knew we lived together for 9 at that point.
Yeah.
So yeah, she knew him since she was 8.
Yeah.
Yep. And so.
Oh, thanks.
Thank you.
Sorry.
All right, we're gonna have to pause for a minute, guys. Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So you'd been in her life since she was 8 years old.
Yeah.
And and now you have this relationship with God, and I think this is one of the things as a pastor, I got saved and man, God changed my whole world. And I love to tell people like my life's been perfect ever since. It hasn't. You have ups and downs and it's hard, you have moments.
Yeah.
And like the things that we go through, I think sometimes, especially people that aren't Christians, I think sometimes they look at Christians and think their life must just be perfect. That's why they do it,
Absolutely.
and I think there's this aspect of, what it does. It gives us hope for a future.
Yes.
And it allows us to know that God is good.
Yeah.
Through the good and through the bad.
Absolutely.
And that He loves us irregardless.
Mm-hmm.
Like being able to like the trauma that you've gone through in your life, the fact that it's probably one of the most compelling, heart-wrenching, heartache stories I've ever heard, and yet there's God.
Yeah.
And he brings you to, and I think about this all the time. Like, it's one of the reasons I think I love that the church is God's dream for the planet, right? Like Jesus wanted the church, and the thing is that these are the moments where, you know the prodigal son story, right? One of the things I'm always grateful for in that story is when the lost son comes back, that he didn't run into the older brother first. He ran into a heavenly Father who loved him.
Yeah.
And that's what happened with you. You ran into a heavenly Father that loved you. And there's this aspect that as Christians, I think it's why we always have to live a life where we're the Father, right? That we run to celebrate the return. I always say this, whenever I was going through my really hard times, the one thing that never helped me was criticism. It was never the key to my problem. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's love and it's grace and it's compassion. And I want to say I didn't know about your daughter, right? And hearing that, I know you'll see her again.
We do too.
And that's the peace in it, And that's tough though. That's a tough one. How do you as a husband then, I don't even know how as a husband and a father how did you guys navigate that together? And
It was different too because just as a blended family,
Right.
You do kind of, we both recognize you do kind of have a different relationship with your
absolutely.
children
100%.
and then we
Right.
do with our own. And
Yeah.
because we each had 2, like we got that right off the bat, and it was like,
that was really a blessing.
okay,
honestly,
like-
'cause we felt a lot of guilt initially
Yeah.
with the blended family of why don't I feel the exact same way about your kids that I do
Yeah.
of mine and vice versa. We had that talk early on, and that really helped tremendously to know that
Yeah.
we're not horrible people. It's just
Right.
It's just something. It's
Yeah.
a thing.
But because of that, and Amaya was she was difficult, and she was struggling with mental illness.
Yeah.
And because of that, I think she butt heads with you a lot, where I gave her a lot more grace.
Yeah.
Because she's my daughter, and I think it just naturally went
I
that
did a
way.
horrible job. I feel like because respect is I'm a man, and I feel like if you're not respecting me, you need to. Let's fix this. And my fixes didn't work.
Yeah.
The things that I thought would speak to her didn't speak to her, and I got bitter and I got angry, and I have a lot of regret about how I handled myself as a father, with all the kids, really. But I feel like we kind of were able to navigate that, and when everything happened with Amaya, it was guilt at first, but then it was like, okay, it couldn't be done perfect. There would always have been something, and we were able to just dive into the grief. Really, honestly, the pandemic happening last year was both a blessing and kind of a curse at the
was
same
hard
time.
for us at the same time.
Because March 13th, Amaya passed.
And that was kind of the
The
day.
state shut down pretty
Yeah.
much the same time.
Yeah.
So on one hand, it was amazing because our world stopped. So did the
Yes.
real world.
Everything
Yeah.
It's like,
stopped.
okay, we
It's like,
because then it's like
okay.
everyone's feeling our grief. It's our grief, but everyone else is feeling it.
Yeah.
The life's not normal right now for anybody.
Right.
And they didn't
But then-
expect normal.
Yeah.
Nobody was normal. Nobody knew
Right.
normal at that point. So it
But
was
then
like,
we had to navigate the difficulties of we're planning a funeral where nobody can attend. And venues were getting closed down. We had a spot right when they said 50 people. We're like, okay, we'll use this. We'll find 50 people. And they said, no, 10 people. And then it was like, I don't even know if you can do 10. And, people normally in a time of grieving, you have family surround you.
Yeah.
They couldn't really,
Yeah.
or were nervous to. And
Right.
so it was double-sided for sure. Like we were both like, this is good that we can begin to grieve this process, but it's also really sad because there's no one here to grieve it with us.
But I really feel like, God used that even to say, I'm all you really have, right? Like,
Yeah.
this is who you lean on me, you come to me, So, in a sense, we were forced to do that because
Yeah.
there weren't a lot of people. There were, some people that would be willing to kind of
Right.
Yeah.
meet with us.
Yep.
But for the most part, we were kind of on our own in our little bubble. And so,
Well, and in the midst of that, you met Sean.
Yeah.
He's got the scarring on his face. He was in the Air Force, the Air National Guard last year. He was in training.
when Amaya passed.
When Amaya passed. So he was struggling, with losing his sister while still doing his training. He came home in June, and on the first night he came home, he was in a motorcycle accident. He was hit by a drunk driver, and it was really bad. His face had basically been
bad.
torn off.
No.
So we had to put stuff on hold again.
Right.
And like now we have to deal with this trauma. And
Yeah.
his entire life changed. He went from he's going to be a pilot, he's doing this in the Guard,
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
I can't do that anymore. I don't know what I'm going to do with my life.
To
And-
surgeries and rehab. And, he still has a lot to go even
Wow.
forward. And so then at that point, we kind of lost it with God.
Yeah.
And we sat a 4th of July, everybody's with their families, and we're in a hospital. And we came home that day, and we sat in our car, and we were just like,
We just
what
screamed.
are you doing?
We were so mad. Just
Why? And,
just didn't feel like it felt like we were the butt of a joke.
Yeah.
Just
Yeah.
one thing after another after another.
Yeah.
But he was quick to be like, I'm still here.
So good.
It was
Yeah, that night we kind of lost it.
Yeah.
Both of us
Yeah, of
still
course.
believed.
Yeah,
that
yeah.
never left.
Yeah.
And then the next morning I went to see him, and it was like
it was a drastic
a
improvement.
flipped switch.
So
He was really bad the day before.
Yeah.
And then the next morning, and I cried and cried and cried, and he recognized me. He was awake. He was fine.
And
And
that was what was so beautiful because we didn't say, God, heal him, God, take care of him. We said, what are you doing? We said words we probably shouldn't have said to God.
we were mad.
We were
Right.
furious.
So you were just
Right.
human then.
We were
Right.
just
just
human.
completely
Yeah.
human.
And that's what, I feel like that's God gives us that space to do that.
Absolutely.
He gives us that
Yeah.
that spot to be real, to wrestle.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
we wrestled, and we didn't
We
say,
did.
God, heal Sean. We said, we're so mad at you right now.
We don't know what's
And the next
going
morning,
on.
he still is like, I still got you.
So
And
good.
I remember seeing him, and I mean, Sean didn't know how he had been acting previously.
Yeah.
And so I said, you would not believe how different it is today. And he said, God's got this, Mom. I was
It's
like,
amazing.
okay.
What a great kid, man.
Yeah.
So, and I mean, it's been a process, but he's been home, and yeah, it's
How old is Sean?
he's almost 21.
Okay.
Yeah. And he just got his own place. And
Yeah.
so,
Yeah, he was talking about it. I was
Yeah. He's
I
very
was-
excited about
yeah,
it. Yeah.
he was. Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
way nicer than the first place I ever had.
I know.
Really fancy.
Yeah, same here. Yeah, same
Yeah.
here. You know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, good for him.
Yeah.
That's amazing. So you go. You know, I think one of my favorite things to I don't know. I don't want to say remind people about, but that I like to mention is that God calls us to excellence, but He completely released us from perfection.
Yeah.
And He doesn't have any requirement that we're perfect. And I think those moments of grief and heartache where we call on a God because we're confused and we're hurt, man, those are some of the most beautiful moments. I think the moments in my life that strengthened my faith the most probably weren't when everything was going great.
Oh,
It was
yeah.
probably when I needed to rest in Him, you know, and
Yeah.
and all those Bible verses about, like, you know, resting in Him, making Him your strength, and giving Him your anxieties. Like, those are the moments when you understand them. When like, listen,
Yes.
and I think He loves us enough to let us be real. He wants an authentic relationship.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You know, and He doesn't want you to be a fake son and daughter. He wants you to be real.
Right.
Right.
And
Yeah. Right.
that's so. And this is all in the midst of the pandemic.
Right.
Wow.
Yeah.
I mean, I thought my pandemic was rough. Like, this is a tough one, you know. And so, like, so how did you can I just ask a couple quick questions?
Of
Like, I
course,
came
yeah.
to your home, and how do you have such a lifestyle? I know the answer is God, but could just elaborate on this. But like, being in your home, it just felt loving and peaceful and joyous. You know, it felt like, man, this is. I remember me and my buddy left, and we're like, we could be friends with them. Like, they're cool, you know. And there was just this peace about you guys, and this kindness and gentleness. How are you able to maintain, like, your childhood does not, like, that's like 2 + 2 = 4. Your childhood does not equal that kind of home.
Right.
And so, and I know it's God that transforms all of it, but
Yes.
in those times of grief and heartache and wrestling with God, and then having God show up, and everything's, I know that feeling that just happened in my life. But how do you maintain a home of that kind of home in what I would call, like, the chaos of life?
I would say my husband and I are both in the Word daily.
Yeah.
And the difference that makes, in 2016, a question was raised in our house church group that we were in, and they said, who do you identify with probably the most in the Bible? And I really didn't really know, and I thought, well, maybe Paul. And so, but then I was like, I don't really know Paul's story that much. So then I
Right.
started to read Acts, and that's where it started. And it just, like, reading in the Word every day, you get to know who God really is. And He speaks to me still through the Word. I write down a prayer, and that day I'll read, and I'm just like, I just bawl, because I'm like, you're here. And that's how I knew He was with me.
So good.
That's how He spoke to me, is through the Word, and then He's in the Word, so we discuss together what we're reading, what we're sharing, and we have those moments where we can say, like, God knows everything. You know, He knows that we're reading this right now. He knows that we should have read this passage in this moment. Like,
Yeah.
We still have struggles for sure. I mean,
Yeah.
there's a lot of stuff that comes up that is difficult, but massive amounts of grace for each other.
yeah,
And yeah, both of us have really realized that to grow closer together, if both of our focus is on God, we can't help but to get closer.
Yeah. So
and it's
good.
you know, putting that into practice and just trying to be Christ to each other, to our kids, to whoever we come across. Doesn't work out great all the time, but
Sure.
but that's the goal. That's what we shoot
Yeah.
for.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's really good. I mean, and I think, so like, I mean, obviously went through all of, like, that's some big stuff.
Wait, I have a question.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Who do you identify now as?
Yeah.
I still identify with Paul.
All right. Very cool.
This is from years of study, so she's
His
Yeah.
his like almost hatred
Yeah.
for, yeah, I mean, he was a Jew, but
Yeah.
like the Christianity was
Yeah.
like, and then Jesus just finding him,
Yeah.
and I mean he's completely switched,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
I get that. I'm like, that was me. We're big Lord of the Rings fans, which
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
And there's a line that's, talking about who picked up the ring, and it says
Yeah.
the most unlikely creature imaginable
Yeah.
Right.
picks up the ring. And I always think like I was the most unlikely person to ever know God. Just
Yeah.
the amount of, I just despised him. I didn't want anything to do with it.
Yeah.
And and now, yeah, I mean, being a believer and yeah.
It changes everything,
It
doesn't it?
really does.
Changes everything. I love, like, we talk about this a lot in our home, that we changed our family tree when I got saved. Like, it changed everything, and we were fortunate that our kids were younger, and they fell in love with Jesus very quickly on their own walk, and they've had a great journey. And I once in a while, I'll meet somebody who's has just come to know Christ, right? Which is those are my favorite times, and I think, like, I often wonder, like, do they really think my life was always like this? Like, do they always think I was always this happy and joyous and full of hope? Because I wasn't, and there's this aspect that I think there's nothing more beautiful in life than someone who believed they were unworthy finding out that they're a daughter of a king, or a son of a king, and I think we met with someone the other day. They were actually talking about this. It really struck me as they were always a really good person. So when they received, they did everything right. And so when they received Jesus, they're like, of course he loves me. I do everything right, And when I would walk into church, I was afraid I'd get struck by lightning, Like, that's how I felt, And there's this aspect that I love, that, like, God's love for us is never conditional.
Yeah.
Right.
It's not how polished we come to him. It's just that we come to him.
Yeah.
And that even before we come to him, he's there for us.
Absolutely.
And his love and care is. And like, going through all of these things, like, I know obviously it's the pandemic and everything shut down, but how were your friends able to, like, support you in this? Was there things that they were able to do that helped you feel cared for in this time?
Yes. So, crazy enough, a month before my daughter passed, I used to work at a school, an elementary school, and I met this woman there. She's a teacher, and we connected, and we went out to dinner in February. And then we talked about our losses. She had a daughter who actually passed away as well. And I talked about my husband at that time.
Yeah.
And then I lost Amaya. And she really did swoop in.
Yeah.
She was like, I know this, I got this, I'm here. She was willing to meet with me. And his family is great too.
Yeah.
They were willing to kind of sometimes
even
step
being nervous,
in.
it was, let's meet in the driveways.
Yeah, we made it work.
Anything they could do to
is-
make themselves available, they were attempting to do. So.
Ah, it's so
Yeah,
good.
and they threw a birthday party for Amaya, kind of for us. I didn't want to do anything big.
We went up to the UP and celebrated Amaya by ourselves up there.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And but it was cool because at the same time there were like 2 or 3 parties for Amaya going on.
It was
back
so
home.
just amazing to see people celebrating her, but
Yeah.
we didn't have to put anything on, and we could just
Right.
be,
Yeah.
ourselves. It was, our circle was small through it,
Yeah.
but it was everything that we needed.
So good.
yeah, I mean, I don't know how this
Yeah.
past year would have gone without the support
Very-
that we did
yeah,
have.
absolutely. So here we're kind of, I always say we're kind of coming to the end of, it feels like we're coming to the end of the quarantine and all of that,
Yeah.
you know, and like, oh man, sorry, I'm gonna cry again. That's just it's a touching story, right? It's very touching. And, but when you look at your life today, like, what do you think, like, how would you describe to someone the peace and love that God has shown you in this season? Like, how would you explain that, if you don't mind?
Yeah, I think to backtrack a little bit, I think like what you said earlier, people have this idea of a Christian life,
Yeah,
and I prayed a lot for Amaya to be healed,
yeah,
and sometimes it doesn't happen the way that you would think.
100%. Yeah.
I mean, she's at peace now.
Yes.
And that's the healing he had in mind. I wanted him to heal her here.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's I think that's what a lot of people have a hard time.
Sure.
Because sometimes
Right.
people do pray and people pray that cancer would be gone and
Yeah.
it's gone, and that's
Yeah.
great.
Absolutely.
I
Yeah.
love that he works
Yeah.
that way.
Absolutely.
He also works in ways that we would never want,
Yeah. Yeah,
never
that's
think
true.
of.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I mean, the reality is we do have that hope. We
Yeah.
have hope. I really have peace for her because her mind isn't chaos anymore.
Yeah, it's
And I can look at that and I can say, okay, God, like it would almost be selfish for me to want her here still because she's at peace.
Yeah.
And one day we're gonna be there with her at peace.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Oh gosh, that's just amazing to hear
It
you
is.
talk about that, because we have the ideas of what we want and how we want them to happen, and a lot of people would get bitter. Do you
Yeah.
know what I mean? And hearing how you have walked through this, like I couldn't even imagine. I think strengthens actually my faith, right? Because I mean, yeah.
That was the initial attraction that I had to Kate was her story.
Yeah.
I love stories.
Yeah.
And Kate's story was just so different than what I'd normally, heard or grew up with.
Yeah. Guys, I gotta be honest, this has been an incredibly touching time with you guys. And it like hearing you guys talk and just hearing your story, I'm even more in awe of who you are as people. I left your home and it was all we talked about, just how there was it was such a level of peace there, and you're so kind.
That's
I
really
know I
good to
keep
hear.
saying
I
it over and
appreciate
over,
I'm
but
glad
it was
that
very
it was
impactful.
felt.
And
Oh, do you want to hear something funny? If I can back.
oh yeah, you gotta hear this part. Yeah.
Because I had so we found your couch on Marketplace.
Yeah.
And I had messaged you a week earlier.
Oh,
Yeah.
And you said the couch was available.
Yeah.
Because I had been looking for sofas for upstairs in my living room. I
Yeah.
can't stand my couches. And Carl was like, oh, I don't know if that's the right color, because I'm more like a gray and white up there in pink.
Yep.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
And I was like, but I really like this couch. And I messaged you here, like, it's available. I'm like, okay, I'll talk to my husband. And Carl's like, oh, just wait. And then we started to redo the basement, and this your couch literally just kept popping
did.
up.
It-
I mean,
over
it just
and
kept
over and
popping
over.
up and popping
Wow.
up. And I'm like, I told Carl that morning, because we're not very patient people. And he needed a couch, and I was like, these are the 3 couches you can choose from. I've messaged everybody, they're available. And he picked that couch. And I said, this was the couch I talked to you like a week ago about.
She literally.
And I was
That's
like,
so
there's
crazy.
something about this couch.
that's awesome.
Well, clearly it wasn't the
It was
couch,
you
it was
guys,
the
right?
people. But I
Yes,
think it is just like, even it is amazing how, like, through a couch, right?
Yes.
Like, we can hear your story,
Yeah.
which to me is, it's crappy but great. Do you know what I mean?
I know.
Because
yeah,
it's like
yeah.
you, like, the things that I thought, do you know what I mean? Like, oh man, these are tough for me, are literally like nothing. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So for you to be able to speak to and maybe give somebody hope who's like struggling with something and saying, you know what, look, I've gone through it and it's not easy, but I've gone through it and God's never let me down in the whole time.
Right.
I think it's just amazing how it all works together. Do you know what I mean? Through a couch on Marketplace.
Those are my
right?
favorite ways that stuff
I
works.
know.
To, you know,
I
something
know.
So random,
innocuous and
it
something,
seems,
yeah.
but it's really not.
Right.
I
Yes.
mean, I feel like that. I mean, even in the dark times, like when I lost my husband, like I could not see how is this going to be a good thing?
Yes.
How's this ever going to be a good thing? And then I met Jake, and like I was saved. Like even those moments, like I can look forward and be like, oh, okay, like now I see why it all works out for the good, like you said.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah.
It was interesting when the person showed me the couch. Like I did not like it. But the last time she showed me, she said, "Honey, she goes, here's the 3, but this is the one I think you're supposed to go with." And I was like, I looked at it and I remember saying, I actually really like that. And
All of a sudden, you
like all of a sudden,
Right.
she had showed me it for like a week straight. But that was this is the interesting part. That was the only day out of all the days she showed me the couch that I could have gone. Any other day, I would have sent
Really?
one of my sons. Right, I would have sent a son of mine,
That's
my
really
my
cool.
oldest son.
Yeah.
Because his back's better
And he's stronger.
and he's stronger. But the other thing, it was interesting. I came home and I was telling my wife about your basement.
Yeah.
And I said, I told him I was a pastor, which I don't usually tell people.
Sure.
And she was like, well, how were they with that? I said, they were okay. No, but it was able to tell, he was able to pray with you and whatnot.
Yeah.
And there was this, I left there and, I mean, I don't want to say I was emotional because that's not the right word, but I was taken in my heart. Like, I can't wait to hear their story, and I can't wait to get to know them at a deeper level. And it was completely a God thing.
Yeah, for sure.
And
Absolutely.
we had already paid for the couch when I mentioned I had a movie theater room and you took me to the basement. I was like, this is cool. I wonder if I'd pay for this too. No?
I've heard all about the letdown I am with the movie.
Guys, I just wanted to say thank you so much.
Thank you guys so much. We
Really,
appreciate
we
it.
appreciate
for having
this.
us.
This was
Vulnerable
awesome. I know it's hard to be vulnerable and talk about things sometimes, and I appreciate you guys trusting us enough with it and being able to share it with. It's going to impact people's lives.
Yes,
And
100%.
there's a verse in Revelations that says the essence of prophecy is in our lives is what Jesus Christ has done for us. What Jesus did for you is he brought you into this place where you really can withstand this tremendous storm, but now you can help others in that
Right.
same process, and your grace and love for others is apparent.
Yes.
And I think you're going to see just a tremendous amount of opportunity in your lives to be able to change lives because of what God's been able to do inside
It's
of
kind
you.
of our
That's
direction.
it's my passion. I really want people to hear it because
So
it's.
good.
I mean, he allowed this to be my story for a reason, and I'm not going to not do something with that.
Good for you.
Feel strongly about. I have to, and we want to reach people as a couple as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep, absolutely.
Well, guys, thank you so much.
Thank you guys
So
so
appreciate
much.
it.
Yeah,
thank
it
you.
was so nice to meet you. I'm so glad you brought our
Me too.
It's funny. When you left, I said to my son, do you see how God works?
Yeah.
And I said, that wasn't a chance that we met you because we knew we were going to, you
Yeah.
ask about the podcast. And I said, that's how God works. Like,
So cool.
yeah.
Oh, he's so faithful, isn't he? So good. Well, thanks so much, guys.
Yeah.
Seriously.
Thank you guys.
Thank you.